From time to time, I like to explore some brands that are a little smaller in size and don't usually sell their stuff through the likes of Linsol, Hi-Fi Go or Shenzhen Audio. Today, we will explore one such earphone brand. I found them while scouring the depths of AliExpress, sifting out a whole bunch of e-waste IEMs until I found this. Let's dive into the Tiandirenhe TDRH Genesis. That is a mouthful, that's what she said. For brevity's sake, I'll just call it the Genesis. So Tiandirenhe may sound like a bunch of gibberish that you see on e-waste IENs, but rest assured, there is a greater meaning to the name. It's just that it does not really translate well into English. Tiandi here refers to heaven and earth, while Renhe means humans and peace literally. Putting them together, it means everything is peaceful. Yeah, but I think for most folks, Tiandirenhe will be a bit hard to pronounce. Anyway, starting things off with an unboxing, packaging on the Genesis is interesting as it is quite unlike other brands in the market. It reminds me of Chinese souvenirs that you might find at some attractions in China, and the item that you want to buy is packaged in such a wooden box. The Genesis comes in said wooden box and it's actually quite nice. Originally, it does have a sticker detailing which model it is, but it was on the plastic wrapper, so I had to destroy it when I was trying to open it. Inside it, you get the earphones themselves sitting in foam, also a rather decent 8-core silver-plated copper cable and a whole plethora of ear tips. You get 4 types of ear tips, 2 sets of silicone that is perhaps a bit way too soft, 1 set of excellent silicone ear tips, and lastly, some foams for those of you who likes them. Tiandirenhe is pretty generous when it comes to ear tips, so you will have a good time finding out which suit you best. For me, I really like the stiffer silicone ones. Build quality. So the Genesis is a resin IM that has the driver unit and case in full resin. Taking into consideration that this costs about $50 US, I think it's quite acceptable for the way it looks. It's a bit rough looking, but it's still quite cheap, so you really get what you pay for. That's it. However, it does feel pretty solid in my hands and will certainly withstand drops quite well. The faceplate section is quite interesting as it features a polychromatic color changing thingy which will change depending on how light hits it, which makes it quite pretty. Inside the Genesis features a 1DD plus 1BA HUD where the bass and mids are done by the dynamic driver while the treble is rendered through the balance armature. Moving on to comfort, I have no issues with the comfort of the Genesis. It fits me pretty snugly and the cable is nice and soft as well, making it really easy to handle. The ear hooks do not have an overly aggressive wraparound design, so it remains pretty comfortable. Sound. Sonically, the Genesis has a V-shaped signature that has a hybrid tonality. What it does better than traditional hybrids is that I found that the bass and mids to be largely cohesive sounding. The way Tiandirenhe utilizes the dynamic driver here to deal with both bass and mids allows it to be really cohesive compared to classic hybrid sounds where bass is just done by the dynamic driver while everything else is done by whatever permutation of balance armatures. However, dynamics here is slightly on the low side as it does not manage to differentiate between louder and quieter sections all that much. While it does have a slightly pronounced upper mids, which will give you good focus in the music, it does not have the best of treble extension, as I don't find it to be all that airy, but that said, it will be good for folks who are a little more treble sensitive. Also, as mentioned, my favourite tips are the firmest feeling silicone tips. I found that they provide the best sound out of all the ear tips that's provided. Bass. Bass on the Genesis, as mentioned, is rendered through the dynamic driver. The Genesis prioritizes sub-bass over mid-bass, and as such, it helps create a very clear mid-range performance. I found transients on the bass to be tight and fast but not overly dynamic sounding, but honestly because it's just like $50, it's quite okay for its price category. Fortunately for folks who mainly listen to vocals, this sort of bass is perfect to accentuate vocals as it will not take your attention away from them. Midrange. Midrange is very cohesive with the bass as it is rendered all by that dynamic driver. I found that vocals to be the highlight of the Genesis. Vocals have a very good texture with very decent resolution. I found separation to be decent on the Genesis as well. Vocals sound pleasantly even between male and female vocals. I do feel that tonally they can benefit from being a little smoother sounding. Instruments are also adequately defined as well as they are pretty clear and can be heard well in the mix. Treble. Treble extension is where I think it becomes a little problematic for the Genesis. Now it does have treble extension, as you can see from the graph provided, but the thing is they don't sound airy. However, it isn't shouty sounding, but I feel that treble can benefit from being a bit more refined and a bit smoother as well. Soundstage, firstly, when it comes to width and height, it performs pretty averagely. It's not the biggest sounding IM in its price class. I think this is largely due to the dynamics or lack thereof. Depth and positioning. Depth again suffers from mediocre dynamics, allowing it to be just kinda average. Positioning though, it's actually pretty good. So next up, some comparisons. Firstly, versus the DUNU Titan S2. Now the DUNU Titan S2 is a single DD IM from DUNU and is the successor to the popular Titan. It is DUNU's entry-level IEM. What is great about the Titan S2 is the build quality and the plethora of accessories that is provided. You get basically 4 sets of ear tips here, including the DUNU Candy ear tips, as well as the much applauded SNS, which makes it a great value. Sonically, it is a standard V-shape that lacks a bit of resolution even in its price category. Compared to the TDRH Genesis supersedes the Titan S2, it just has more resolution in the same price class. But the Genesis lags behind when it comes to fit and finish. The DUNU's metal chassis is very refined, while the Genesis is a little rough around the edges. Next up, versus the Sivga Que. Now the Que is an anomaly in its price category with extremely good fit and finish. It has a metal chassis with a wooden faceplate that is paired with a really beautiful cable. Sonically, the Que is a slightly warm-leaning V-shape with elevated upper mids. I found resolution to be quite a bit better on the Que as it simply is just more cohesive sounding. The Genesis, by comparison, is a tad bit more laid back and just slightly lags behind when it comes to sonics. Next up, some likes and dislikes. Firstly, what I like about the Genesis. Now this is an IEM that is clearly made by a smaller brand. It has a lot of heart and you can experience that while using the IEM. Sonically, I really enjoyed it when it comes to vocal-centric music or for the times where I just simply want to listen to vocals, and I think that it is a great pair for that. The wooden case is pretty interesting, if not a little gimmicky. Now, some things that I do not like on the Genesis. I think that it could use a bit more dynamics in the sound department for it to be a little bit more interesting. And finally, rating. So bass, it is quite speedy with decent resolution. It could do with a bit more dynamics, so I'm going to give it a 6.5. Mids have a very lovely rendering of both male and female vocals. This is the highlight of this IEM, so it gets a 7. Treble is decent but not really airy, so it gets a 6.5. Resolution, again, it's decent, so it's a 6.5. Soundstage is pretty average and not that much spectacular. So it's a 6.5. And lastly, for the enjoyment factor, how much I enjoyed this IEM, I found that the Genesis is great when I want to just purely listen to vocals. I think for it to be a bit more all-rounded, it needs more dynamics which can take it to the next level. It gets a B. And finally, in conclusion, thanks again for watching. If you like the content so far, please kindly press the like and subscribe button. It will help me out a bunch. So lastly, in conclusion, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content so far, please kindly press the like and subscribe button. It will really help me out a bunch. And if you're already subscribed, 1,000 thanks. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.